Folks, hello, and welcome back to the channel. It's been a few days. I have been very, very, very ill over the past couple of days, and I assume you can tell from my voice that I'm only just getting it back, so apologies. There is a lot more content coming over the next few days. Today is a Q&A day, simply because since I've been off for like 1 or 2 days, the questions have piled up a little bit. So I thought I'd just come on and do that. It's just a nice, simple video to do. Literally me just reading off questions and answering them, which is quite nice. And it is one of my favourite things to do, is the Q&A. Because I can literally sit here with a cup of tea, or a cold drink, or some water, whatever, and just go over your questions without having to write scripts and stuff. That will be done this weekend. There is a big video coming on Monday, and on Sunday we'll be doing the White Scars lore video, which was supposed to be on Thursday. But obviously, with me being bedridden and without a voice, there's not much I can do about doing a lore video, because they tend to be long and require a lot of effort to write. So, anyway, let's jump into your questions, shall we? If you want to do any questions, you want to send me any questions, Patreons get the first dibs on questions, so the Patreon link is down below. It really doesn't matter what you give. You can give me 20 pence and still send me a question. And you get to talk to me one-on-one as well. I'm always there, like having a little chat to people. And if I know you're a patron, we always chat on Discord one-on-one all the time as well, especially if you get in touch with me. I have a nice call coming on Saturday with one of my patrons, which I'm looking forward to very, very, very much. You know who you are, so, I'm looking forward to listening to what you have to say. Let's jump in, shall we, to our questions. Alrighty, number 1. Now, which one do I pick? Do I pick number 1 or number... Yeah, okay. Let's do this one. If my mic goes off, I'm either sneezing or coughing, by the way. Hail, Chapter Master Exilus. Okay, I'm not going to do the intro for a lot of these. A lot of these I'm just going to boil down to the question. I was wondering if you could give us a bit of context as of power levels in 40k. You talk a lot about the strengths of named characters, how the Astartes in general should be the bogeymen of the universe, and how the lore doesn't always align with the game and vice versa. I feel things get lost in translation, especially when the boogeymen have boogeymen who in turn have their own boogeymen. I also ask that you focus more on rank and file of factions rather than the named characters, i.e. Guardsmen, Scouts, Astartes, Death Watch, Custodes, Inquisitor, Xenos, etc. If you wish, you can include generic commanders, chapter masters. Okay, yeah, fair enough. I'll let you decide what system is best for the task. As you say, don't tell us, show us. Okay, cool. So, I was going to read the second part of your thing, but it's basically appealing for... Do you know what? No, I will do. Anyway. Secondly, I also have a suggestion for you. Or accurately, fellow listeners. I'm an avid listener to NPR, National Public Radio. While that in itself is unimportant, and you may all pass judgment if you wish, I assure you this is going somewhere. NPR is paid through donation from generous businesses and listeners. Sound familiar? During their donation drives, listeners hear or pledge a one-time amount, or X or Y dollars a month. Plenty of people don't pony up for plenty of reasons. I listened for years before I finally started contributing. What people don't realise is the amount they're asking for is factoring all the people that don't help out. It wasn't until during one of their donation drives, when they broke down what every listener needed to contribute to hit their goal, that it's actually very little. Yeah, that is true. That is actually very, very, very true. So, now, I have read this one before, and I know that he goes on to say, look, if you like me, then go on to North's Patreon and do that. That's fine. Thank you very much for doing that. But I actually want to pick up on that point there. People on YouTube, or most of the people on YouTube, when they ask for donations to the Patreon, they always do the lowest common denominator, because, or they're supposed to anyway, because what you're supposed to do is to generally take, if you've got a target in mind to hit a month, you need to generally take what everybody take your subscriber count, right? Divide it by 10, and whatever those people need to give you a month to hit your target, that's what you ask for, right? Basically. I need to update mine, obviously, because when I did mine, I had... My target is $750 a month. I may have hit that, I may not have hit that. It goes up and down every single month, so I don't know. Well, I do know, but like it goes on a month-by-month basis. So sometimes I hit it, and sometimes I really don't, and then sometimes I do it again, and sometimes I really don't. But now I've got 11,000 subscribers, so maybe I need to look into that a little bit more. I don't know, but yeah. So I used to say $1 was my thing I would ask for, because I had 7,000 subscribers. $1 from 10% of those, $700, right? As you do. So that's what I used to do. So yeah. It is a relatively small amount, and that's why YouTubers ask for it in those small amounts, Rob. If you ever wonder why, anyway. And in terms of your other part of the question, the Boogeyman question, yeah, I mean, I would feel like I do talk about the rank and file when we're doing lore videos on big factions. So, when I've done factions like the Eldar, or factions like the Imperial Guard, in general, we do the entire faction. We don't really do the single characters. The reason why we do that for Legions and for the Space Marine chapters is because the Space Marines have characters that are very much essential to the Warhammer 40,000 experience. And a lot of the best books of Warhammer 40,000 are based on characters that are, shall we say, integral to moving the plot forward, right? There is no 40k without War Master Horus, for example. There just isn't, right? So, I think that's the reason why we kind of stick towards the character side of things when it comes to Space Marines and things like that. So every Legion video will have characters in it. Every chapter will have characters in it. Ironically, the White Scars probably won't, because they don't have very many. So, yeah, they'll have the Calm there, but that's about it, you know? It may be Jubal, but I don't know. We will look into it. I have read Scars, by the way, and other books, so I know I'm going to get a reaming out from Outer Circle if I don't do White Scars properly. 1 second. Sorry, I needed to sneeze. It's always the way, isn't it? Right. Next. Okay, so who is the worst customer you've ever had at Games Workshop? Okay, so I think you say Games Workshop. The worst customer I ever had was not a Games Workshop customer. But I will talk about a Games Workshop customer if you want me to. So for those of you who don't know, right in the back of my back catalogue, there is a guy called the Titan Guy, right? I think I call him Dave the Titan Guy, or something like that. Or maybe it's just the one thing that I say. Anyway, the Titan Guy. And the Titan Guy was a bit of a legend on my channel, because it's what got my channel started. Was this story about the Titan Guy, which I will regale you with here. So if you've already seen it, then, you know, don't worry, it's okay. Let's get into it, shall we? So, when I was working for Games Workshop, the store was doing very, 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 very well, and I was really, really enjoying my time there and things like that. This is in the golden age of the store, where the things are generally like being pulled out left, right, and centre. So I see this car pull up outside. You know, car just pulls up outside it's almost like a little minivan sort of a thing. And I'm sitting there just doing some hobby or doing little bits and bobs around the store, and I look up out the window to see this guy who looks like an obvious neckbeard. He looks like an obvious guy who's going to come in and, you know, play games in the store, right? He gets out of his car. I'm thinking, that's one of my guys. That's a neckbeard, right? He'll be in here any second now, buying some stuff. I need to get ready for this customer, right? So I'm walking around, generally looking busy, but trying not to look too busy, so I can go over and say hello to him. He goes into the back of his van, and he pulls out what I can only describe as one of those trolley things, you know? An industrial trolley that it's sort of like vertical with two handles at the top and two wheels at the bottom, and you slide in underneath the thing that you wanna move, and then you pull it backwards and then wheel it, you know, that kind of a thing. I'm sure you've all used one of them before, or seen one of them being used. Anyway, used in offices most of the time. He goes into the back of his car, his vehicle, slides this in, and pulls his thing out and pulls it out. And I'm thinking, well, maybe he's a delivery driver for somebody. You know, whatever. He closes up his car, comes in through the door of Games Workshop, puts down the trolley, and says, "I am here for a battle." And I just look over, and everybody in the store just looks over and goes, okay, cool, yeah, whatever. I walk over there, "Hey man, how's it going? Yeah, cool, yeah, you're here for a battle? Okay, fine, yeah. What have you brought with you in your entire collection?" He goes, "No, a single model." It's like, okay. So I walk over and start getting on with things, thinking like that's obviously a joke, you know, and I'm gonna go with that. He rolls over his thing to the board, and there's a kid standing there getting his army together, and we're like, oh, he's got 1,000 points, he's happy, you know, and he can push it to 2,000 points. They get into a bit of a conversation, and I hear him say, "Do you want to see it?" from the other side of the store. That's something you never want to hear a neckbeard say to a child, by the way. And I look over, and I'm really, really, really busy, but I look over after a few minutes, an Imperial Titan has emerged from this guy's box. Not a bought one he's made at home, right? Still looks really good, still looks like it could be a thing, but it's still, you know, an Imperial Titan, and it's still not one of our models. He picks it up and puts it on the table. A 4x4 table. To which the kid facing across from him is like, "Man, I can't play against that. Its range is like the next town over. Like, and I have 2,000 points here. I can't play against that. You know you know." And he's getting like, the guy's reaming him out like, what are you, a coward? And he's like, no, I just can't play against that. Like, it's ridiculous. In the end, I have to go over and say, "Look, man, this is not appropriate. This is a 4x4 table. Your character, your model takes up most of it. Your model can't deploy. It's outside of the deployment zone for all of the missions we play in store. Right? So it literally can't deploy. So automatically, if you start the game, you will lose. By tournament rules, you will lose because you can't deploy. So none of your models are on the table, which means the other person wins. Because they have table superiority, right? Just is what it is. There's a famous story back in the day. I don't know whether any of you have heard this story. And it's a story about where deep striking had first become a big thing, you know. And it was this guy who used to come in, and it's a big tournament, and he was winning games easily by taking a hugely cheesy list, putting one model on the table, and then deep striking everything else around the back lines of his opponent and just annihilating them off the face of the earth, right? Now, what happened was, and if I remember correctly, is somebody had an infiltrator unit, right? And this unit could be it was a very, very special unit that could be made in, it could be deployed in a little blob or horizontally as well, you know, like in a line. You know, I think most units can do that, but you just don't do it because, you know, there'd be no point. Where this guy had a very interesting idea. He infiltrated his guys a couple of inches in front of his opponent's deployment zone, right? And then spaced them about 2 or 3 inches apart at a time. You know what I mean? Like I think it was like, he had like unit of 20, and so it was still in unit coherency. It was like an inch apart, every single time, an inch apart, all the way down the table. There was lots of them in the unit. I'm misremembering it. I'm fairly sure that I am. Anyway, the game starts, and the guy who's the deep striker says, "Yeah, I'm not deploying anything, so, you know, I'm just going to deep strike everything in." Okay. The game starts, and the other guy says, "Yeah, I've won." He goes, "What do you mean? You can't deploy anything. Like, you need to deploy something, or you've lost." "Well, I'm going to deep strike." "You can't deep strike. Like, you literally can't deploy in your deployment zone. Why? Because you need to deploy a certain amount of inches away from my models. You literally can't win." And a tournament organizer came over and awarded the guy who did this scummy strategy of like, you know, not scummy, but, you know, denying his opponent's deployment zone. It gave him the victory and kicked out the other guy. I'm fairly certain I misremembered that. As I'm probably misremembering my own story, to be honest with you, because I haven't thought about this in a year or so. Maybe 2 years. Anyway. Yeah, so, we get into a bit of an argument in the store, and I end up saying to this guy, look, I've given you the reasons why you can't play with it in store. And number two, it's not one of our models. This is a homemade model. So I'd be giving you like a lot of gratis and a lot of, nice feeling, not nice feelings, but I'd be giving you a lot of leeway if I let you play with it in the store anyway, at all. To which, he argued again that, he's come in with a legitimate model, which it isn't, and he wants to play a game, and this is ridiculous. Anyway, he humiliated a little bit. He takes his Titan, puts it back in his little stroller, like a baby, starts caressing it, like, oh, don't worry, the horrible man wasn't being serious. And he pulls it back and wheels it out the store back into his car, never to be seen again. Anyway, at that stage, I was an idiot, and so I would go online and look for reviews of my store. Never do this, by the way, because most of the people who go online are either going to give you a bland, it was a good store review, or they're going to come out and literally, lambast you if you said anything that they don't like. And this is one of those times. This guy went onto a group called, I think it was called 40k for Grown-Ups, but I can't remember. And most 40k channels on Facebook aren't very good, right? I'm just going to say that off the top of my head. They're not very good. Run by moderators who are overzealous and arsey. Anyway, so he came out and he said, I was at this Games Workshop today. He wouldn't let me play with my Imperial Titan. Blah, 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 And they said, oh, name and shame the guy. And he said my name and he said my store. So, cue me getting lots of angry phone calls and things like that. Basically getting doxxed at the store because of this guy. So in the end, I had to reply and I said, listen, 99% of what you've said were lies. Okay? It wasn't an official model. You brought in a model that wasn't a real model. It was made from, bloody cardboard boxes and stuff. Number two, you tried to play on a 4x4 table with a child, with an Imperial Titan, which doesn't work because you can't even deploy on the table, right? Number three, you were asked politely by the player not to use that model, and you then, after that, you were asked politely by me not to use that model, and you offered an army, by the way, a store army, to play the game with instead, which you refused. So, what would you like me to do? Because if one of my superiors comes in and sees you playing with a fucking cardboard box on my table, I'm going to get sacked, right? Okay, cool. This is when I lost all faith in the hobby, because every single comment below that was just bile. Oh my god, he's outed himself, and it was loads of angry comments about how I was wrong and how I was, the death of the hobby and all that kind of stuff. Listen, I've seen the death of the hobby. It's not that. Okay? It's not that. So anyway, that was the worst customer I've ever had at Games Workshop. There are worse customers that I've had at a normal store. That's the worst customer I've had at Games Workshop. Now, I'd like you to now go back and watch that the Titan Guy video. Because I swear, I've either misremembered or remembered things wrong. Or left stuff out. So go and have a look at that video and if you want the true context of what was going on. I just record it off the top of my head right now. And back then I actually had people, but still do have people, but I actually had people going over an interview with me and actually we write stuff down about how, oh right, yeah, okay, so that happened, yeah. Were you there for that day? Yeah, I was there for that day. And we would go over certain things. I don't really do that anymore because I read out your hobby nightmares. But yeah, back then I had people on call who I could just be like, hey, were you there that day? Okay, what did I not hear? You know what I mean? Like what did I not hear? And things like that. Anyway. Alright. What is your favourite movie and why? So, don't want to sound corny, but the thing that got me into classics and ancient history was Gladiator. So, I'm going to have to say that. It was, for an 11, 12-year-old me, it was an astonishing movie, let's be honest. It was an amazing movie, and it literally was a poster for, hey, you might like Roman history, sort of a thing. Because the writers literally took several different lifetimes of people from Rome, the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire, and brought them into a single character in Maximus, and wrote a story about him, which is incredible the way that they did it. I hear that they are doing a sequel. I'm kind of worried about what they're going to do with it, but we'll see. You know, I've heard some really wacky ideas for sequels, and that's like, you know, a modern day Gladiator, just crazy. I would leave Gladiator where it is, and if you want to, do another epic, Sword and Sandals epic. Not Sword and Sandals, but do another, not a gritty, realistic epic like Gladiator, with another story. Like, you can just do that, rather than give me Gladiator 2, right? Gladiator should be nice and secure where it is. It's beautiful, it's nice, love it, leave it alone. And if you haven't seen it yet, go and watch it. It's bloody brilliant. Why don't you do politics at all on the channel? It's literally so hard to talk about anything without touching on politics, and any discussion without them is kind of weak. Okay, alright, so, let me discuss that. As anyone can see, politics tends to bring out the worst in people. And I'm not just saying that as somebody who, in general, you know, is like on the centre but leans right or left on different topics. I'm saying that just from in a general standpoint. If you go on the internet has more than enough political channels. It has more than enough places to go and discuss your political biases and bile and things like that. I would argue that you can talk about politics in fiction and in the hobby. You just have to do it in a very specific way, where if you're doing it in the fiction, it needs to be veiled, and it needs to be very veiled in the point that it's watered down to the point that it's taking inspiration from it. It's the same as cultures, right? If you go and you just use a Japanese culture in your fantasy setting, that's not very interesting. If you go and use Japanese culture and then infuse it with another culture that you've just made up into its own thing, that's then quite interesting to read about. Okay? Same thing goes for politics. It's really, really, really crap when you have politics just in your setting. You know, it's better when you actually have the Canari, for instance, the original Canari from Dragon Age. You know, they have a lot of communist ideals in there, right? It's mixed with kind of Buddhism as well. They've gone and got like the worst bits of communism and Buddhism and mixed them together. And what would happen if we did that and it was this totalitarian state that, you know, blah blah, and it came out with a Canari, and it was a really interesting, beautiful race, right? So if you're gonna do politics and fantasy or whatever, or in a hobby, that's the way to do it. In real life, though, like talking about politics, I resent that. I don't think you need to talk about politics in every single situation for it to be a valid situation. I don't think that's the case. I think that is an exhausting thing to try and do. And to be honest with you, a lot of people get into the hobby for escapism, right? A lot of people get into the hobby because they want to talk about how to play the game and how to get the most out of their miniatures, how to get the reason why the lore part of YouTube for 40k is so large is because people want to escape. People want to go and think and talk about things. People will go and watch multiple lore videos on the same thing. Okay? It's very, very, very rare for a shall we say, a geeky subculture to have something like that, where normally you'd go and watch a lore video on something and that'd be it. You'd be done. Okay, that's the lore video on that. Moving on. Right? You'd get one YouTuber like a Lewitin or somebody who you would really, really trust. You'd watch their video on something and then ignore everybody else. People in 40k don't do that. Like, for instance, I've watched a video on... Because people do... The 40k scene is so amazing. People do lore in different ways. So, you have Lewitin who will do like like kind of like one of my videos, actually. He'll do it in like an essay kind of a style, where he talks to you about... Like, kind of like he's giving a class on a certain part of the history of Warhammer 40,000. You have my favourite, the Amber King, who does it from a more lore narrative standpoint, and actually writes his own fiction to go in there as well, which is insanely good. Go and watch him if you haven't. You have people like Oculus Imperia, who are very scientific, and the way that they look at the legions, and the way that they go over things, and the Horus Heresy and stuff like that. You have all of these different people, and of course you've got Major Kill, who's like the meme lord of what's going on, and the lowbrow side of things, which has its place. Has its place, man. He's one of the biggest ones for a reason. We have a wonderfully diverse set of people and instances and voices in the Warhammer 40,000 scene. The one thing they don't do is politics, and the reason why is because it doesn't belong in the hobby. It just doesn't. The hobby is a hobby. If politics is your hobby, then go and join a politics society or a debating society and go and enjoy yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. I think what people tend to think is that when I say don't do politics in the hobby, they think I don't like politics in general. I love politics, right? I love talking about politics. It's brilliant. This just isn't the place. One second. Sorry about that. I'm ill. It is what it is. This just isn't the place. This is not the place to go on and talk about how you think the world should be run, or how you think things should go from here on in. It definitely isn't the place to discuss Russia and Ukraine and things like that. It's just not, because Warhammer isn't real. I've had this before with like an Imperial Guard player giving me messages about how he thinks the Guard would win. The war in Ukraine. It's like, what? Dude, it's not real. People are actually dying over there. This isn't like... It's not that... Shut up, right? It just doesn't compute, right? It doesn't compute. Leave it alone. Politics shouldn't be in the hobby. And again, there's nothing wrong with politics in general. Okay? But this ain't the place. This ain't the place, champ. We're here to enjoy these models. We're here to enjoy what goes on. And the minute you start bringing in real-life toxicity into the hobby is when the magic dies. And that's what I don't want you to do. Don't kill the magic. Okay? Don't tell kids that Father Christmas doesn't exist. Alright? And don't bring politics into the hobby. Simple. What do you think of the price increases? Are you going to do a video on them? Yes. Monday's video will be the price increases. I know it's gone up by about 6%. I've not really looked that much into it. If it is what I think it is, and what I've seen from different videos that it is, this is a slap in the face to essentially, every single Warhammer 40,000 player, or any hobbyist, to be honest with you. We talked earlier in the year, last year, about the retail side of things and how them putting up the prices for independent stockists was it was to make sure that they didn't have to pass that burden on to the customer. We said, look, the prices are going to go up for the stockists, but they won't go up for the customer. But it's still really bad because the stockists are going to have to pass on that price increase to you, right? Which is bullshit. The place where we get our nice cheap models, right, from Wayland Games, from Composite Games, from Element, wherever, they're now going up in price because Games Workshop don't want to see you getting your products for cheaper than what they sell it for, right? But at least I then said in that video, at least that they won't up the prices because they've already done this to the independent stockists. Only for them now to up the prices anyway. This company is debauched, it is horrid, and it doesn't deserve your fucking time. I'm done with them. I'm waiting for my voice to fully recover before I do the video. And I'd also like to do a little bit of research as well. I'm going to do that over the weekend, and then on Monday we'll have the big video about the price increases instead of the Games Workshop story. And I might do the Games Workshop story on like the Wednesday or something. But yeah, it's abysmal. It's a shambles. And I've never seen a more abused fan base than the Warhammer fan base. Like, they're literally after your money, man. And they're after it in a big way. And that's not a bad thing in itself if they're offering, like the best service in the world, and they don't. Quite frankly, they don't. Alan down the road with his £800 worth of 3D printer, that's the greatest model you're ever going to see on the face of the earth ever. Right? What you get out of a Splinter pack from Games Workshop usually has mold lines and all of bent things, all other sorts of nonsense going on. You know, I can't defend them anymore. I can't. And when it comes to Monday, I will have my voice back and I'll be able to give you a proper video. So yes, I will be doing a video on them. And I think it's an insult. I think it's a slap in the face. I think they're having their cake and eating it. I think they're taking the piss out of you. They're saying, look, you know, not only are we going to up the prices, force our independent stockists to up their prices, not only are we going to do that, but we're going to up our prices as well. So go fuck yourself. Right? They're trying to corner the market and make sure there's nowhere you can go to not pay an arm and a leg for their models. That's disgusting. That's disgusting. These people are worse than Wizards of the Coast. They are. They're worse. They're just worse. Anyway. Can you be my daddy? Only if you're a good girl. That is the questions for our Q&A for today. I love you long time. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And I will speak to you over the weekend. I'll speak to you on Sunday. We'll be doing some Hobby Nightmares. No, we won't. We'll be doing some White Scars lore. Love you all. See you then. Have a good one. Bye.